Hello and welcome to another episode of Passive Royal. If you like knitting, sewing or crochet sometimes, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we definitely have more content coming your way. Alright, so today I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. So right now, don't know if you've noticed, there's a massive trend towards knitting and crochet DIYs on YouTube and TikTok and Reels if that's what you're into. And from that we can pick out 4 major themes, being colour, fruit, flowers, and chunky. Now, I personally don't like knitting with chunky yarn. I think it's super tacky, it never lasts, and it's usually made with synthetic and cheap materials, and that's not what I'm about. So now I've been knitting since I was about 7 years old, so I'm not new to the game, but I've never made a cardigan with flowers on it before, so that's what I want to do today. Cue the inspo roll. So taking all this inspo in mind and matching it to my own personal taste, I have landed on pale yellow cardigan and white daisies. Now, like I said, I've never embroidered flowers onto my knitwear before, so I've gone ahead and on my swatch for my cardigan, I've actually gone and made some test flowers. So here's just like a better look. I might just show you a photo if it's clearer, but yeah. So you can see that I've tried a few different techniques. One is just, look, I'm not an embroiderer, I don't really know, it's the continuous method, I think that's what it's called. I've also tried the lazy daisy stitch. I've tried 5-pointed flowers, 6-pointed flowers. I think I'm gonna go with the 6-pointed flower. And as you can see, I just didn't finish some because it was not turning out. I also experimented with single thread and double thread, and I've definitely landed on the double thread because it just gives a full look for less work. And that's what we're about. So I'll go into exactly how to embroider the daisy later in the video, but for now we need to figure out how dense the pattern's gonna be. Well, I need to, not we, yeah. So as you can see, I've already gone ahead and knitted all the pieces that I need for my cardigan. I adapted this pattern. I essentially cropped it, made the sleeves a bit more puffy, made the crop a bit more puffy, you know, volume is, should have added 5 themes. Volume's a theme also. Okay, so now we're going to transition to a tabletop view where you're going to see me mark out where I want all my daisies to be, whether I want them diagonally, straight. I'm probably going to go diagonal, let's be real, but how dense the pattern's going to be. I do want it a bit more spaced out. I don't want it super dense, but I definitely want it to be a flower cardigan. So yeah, I think that's, let's just go.
I'm using stitch markers to play with the placement. They're great for this because once we've figured out where we want our daisies to go, we can just clip them in. If you don't have stitch markers, you can always use some contrasting thread. Or what I'll use when I run out of my clover stitch markers, safety pins. You can see that I decided on the diamond lattice spacing, roughly 15 by 15 centimeters apart. Now, because I don't mess with inaccuracy, I've calculated how to evenly space 4 daisies for the first row. For me, this is 22 stitches apart, and I also decided to start the first row 12 rows from the end of the rib. Every following row of daisies is 24 rows apart. With the maths sorted, it's time to count out and mark all our daisies. I used a knitting needle to help me count the rows because I always get lost using my fingers. Using the same spacing and centering on all the remaining pieces, I've placed stitch markers or safety pins where every single daisy needs to go. With everything marked out, it's time to start embroidering our daisies. Here's another close-up of that 6-petal daisy that we're going for. This is made with a double thread to give it a fuller look. I probably should have said this earlier, but I'm using Bendigo Mills 100% cotton for this project. It's not as fancy as some Prima cotton yarn you can get, but at $15 for 200 grams, it's a steal. And it comes in so many colours. I personally have my eye on peppermint and pale lilac for some upcoming projects. It's also Australian made and owned, so that's always a plus. Back to the scheduled programming. I've cut a length of yarn that is about 50 centimeters when doubled, as shown. I'm threading my yarn needle and taking it to the center point of the yarn. Now to begin the daisy, I'm going to bring the yarn needle from the wrong side of the work to the front through that stitch that we marked. I'm going to pull the yarn through, leaving about a 7 centimeter tail. We'll use this to tie the daisy off at the end. Now remove the stitch marker and we can get going. Taking the yarn needle back through that same starting stitch, we're going to go under 5 rows and bring the needle up. Careful not to pull the yarn all the way through because we want that loop. Now bring the yarn needle through that loop that you've created on the right side of the work. Once we've done that, we can now pull the yarn tight. I'm fiddling with it a bit here though because I don't want it to scrunch the actual cardigan. I want my daisies to lay flat against the fabric and have even petals. Once I'm happy with it, I'm going to take the yarn needle and put it through the same stitch that we are currently in to the back of the work, then bring it up in that starting center stitch. And that's one petal done. For the second petal, it's going to be very similar. Put the yarn needle through the center of the work again. Bring it up about the same length away from the center as petal number 1. For me, on this piece of work, it's about 3 rows across at a 60-degree angle. Careful not to pull the yarn all the way through because we're going to take that yarn needle and put it through that center loop that we have created. Again, we're going to play with the tension until our petal sits just right, trying to match it as best we can to petal number 1, and then bring the yarn needle into the same stitch that we're currently in, through the back, and up through that center. Repeat creating petals in this way at 60-degree intervals until we have 6 petals. It is looking so good right now, and I am so excited to see how this is going to turn out. Now on the 6th petal for that last step, we're going to take the yarn through the same working stitch at the edge of the petal, but we're not going to bring it up through the center. So when we turn the work over, we can see 2 ends of yarn. One is going to be our beginning tail end, and the other is going to be our finishing tail end. I'm going to cut the yarn so I can take the yarn needle off, and I'm going to triple knot the tails to finish off the daisy. You could probably tie it off in a more clean way, but this is the level of effort I'm feeling today, and no one's going to focus on the inside of my cardigan, and it holds up pretty well, so sue me. Remember not to cut the yarn too close to the knot because it will come undone. gone ahead and finished up the back piece and I am super happy with it. Even with my cheek knots, the back still looks relatively clean and the front looks actually cute. With the rest of the pieces looking just as dashing, it's now time to sew it all together. I'm using mattress stitch as I always do with knitting. It's flat, it looks almost seamless, and I love it.
So I've gone ahead and stitched up all the seams and also sewn in all the ends. Apart from, which side is it? This one end here, and that's because as I add the front ribbing, there's gonna be a seam where I can hide it, and that's gonna be a lot easier than trying to fiddle with it the way it is right now. But as you can see, it actually looks really good. I really am happy with the spacing. I did think about maybe doing yellow dots in the middle, but I kind of like the way that it is, and it's super simple. I think I might actually add an extra daisy in the middle there to kind of finish off the pattern. Everywhere else seems to go quite well actually. You can see they're a bit closer on the underside of the sleeve, but I think that's alright, no one's gonna see that. You might also notice that my sleeve length is probably just a little bit too short, but I actually prefer it this way when it comes to washing your hands, putting makeup on, trying to do anything that, you know, can get your jumper dirty, or your cardigan in this case. I'm just not into it, and I just kind of like to have my clothes out of the way. And I actually think it's quite nice. I think if I stand up, it'll sit quite nicely if I stand up. And you can see even without the front ribbing, it actually just sits really nicely. I'm really happy with the crop length, and I'm hoping that it'll be pretty cute all done up too. But yeah, alright, so I'm gonna start knitting the front ribbing, and I'll also have to do the rib collar, so I'm just gonna show that to you now. Yeah.
Footage of me knitting the ribbing was actually so boring that I cut it, so here it is now. I've knitted up two separate pieces of front ribbing, one with buttonholes, one without, and then mattress stitched it up on the front sides. Here's a closer look. It's pretty clean if I do say so myself, and I'm happy with it. Second to last step now is knitting up the collar. I've picked up stitches evenly around the neckline and knitted about 5 centimeters of rib. My tip for casting off collars that won't choke you is using a few needle sizes larger than what you're working with to cast off the row. I'm a very tight knitter and have to concentrate really hard to cast off loosely. I do think knitted collars look better when they are doubled over, but I can't for the life of me figure out how to do it and keep the stretch. I'm clearly doing it wrong, and I know the collar doesn't look crash hot right now like this, but I promise you, when I have it on, it's gonna look great. Since this isn't a tutorial on how to sew buttons on, I've skipped that part. I used a 3/4 inch white river shell button. These are my absolute favorite buttons to use. I'm so impressed with how this project turned out. Like, it's actually better than I thought it would. The jury is still out on whether pale yellow is my colour or not, but I really just don't care. It fits perfectly, doesn't get in the way, and it stands out. My aim for this project was to create something Insta-worthy, but also in spring and summer I tend to wear old business shirts as cardigans, and I wanted to do something a little more fancy this year. At only $45 in yarn with high quality natural fibres, I need to give a special shout out to Bendigo Wool & Mills for being the MVP. You can catch me wearing this cardigan basically every day already, and I'm planning on making it again in lilac. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see craft times ahead, comment below if you liked my take on the graphic knit, and that's my makeup.